Welcome to another episode of Talking About Records. My name is G.I. Sanders from NTX Vinyl, a small chain of independent record shops in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If you don't already follow us or subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, please do. Would really appreciate it. Today's episode is pretty fun. This is an idea I just thought of. I'm going to call it the blind vinyl review. And what I mean by that is my son is going to pick records from my wall of records behind me. I have no idea what he's going to pick. He's going to pull from the probably 1,000 records that are behind me, hand me a record, and I'm going to talk about it. That's how this is going to work. No rules, no guidelines, other than he's going to try and not pick the same artist, multiple times, something like that. So I just told him to mix it up. We're going to do 10 records. I'm going to talk about them. I'm ready for record number one. Are you ready for record number one, Ben?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Record number one is... All right, good choice. This is Ball-Hog or Tugboat. I'm not sure if this is a glare. I think this should probably be fine. This came out, I believe, around 94, if I had to guess. Let's see. I was close, 95. The greatness of Mike Watt from the Minutemen, a punk rock, garage rock icon. This is a compilation that he put out that features a who's who of 90s musicians. So everybody from Dave Grohl to Eddie Vedder to Henry Rollins, across the board. Kirkwood and Chris Kirkwood from the Meat Puppets, Flea, I could keep going. They're all listed here on the back. It's an amazing record. It is all written and performed by Mike Watt with this whole slate of guests. And the really cool thing is it comes on a translucent blue wax, which is cool. I think there's a black vinyl version of it too. Pretty rare record, not one you see a lot. And honestly, if you're not kind of like really ingrained in that era of the early to mid 90s, you may not know about this one, but I'd highly encourage you to check it out. Super fun album, pretty diverse, as you would imagine, with that many guest stars. I mean, there's probably 20, 25 different people who guested on this. The cool thing about this too is that Mike Watt actually went on tour to support this record. And it was the very first tour that the Foo Fighters ever went on. They went out on a van tour with Mike Watt. Eddie Vedder was playing in the band as well, but he only lasted a little while, and then the mania got too big around the shows once the word got out and Pearl Jam fans were going nuts. So, but it was cool that the Foos had their first outing as a live band going around the country with Mike Watt opening up. So definitely check out Ball-Hog or Tugboat if you've never heard it. The song Big Train is a huge highlight, gets a lot of play in our house. So there you go. That's record number one, blind vinyl review. What do you got, Ben? Number two. Ooh, very good pick. The Best of the Grateful Dead. The Dead are an interesting beast, I will say. You kind of have to, I think you have to be of a certain age to really appreciate who the Dead are, why the Dead are so revered. And for me, it took me probably until my mid-30s, honestly, going back probably the last 10 years till I really appreciated the Dead. This is a great compilation that's got hits like Truckin' and Ripple. It's got deep cuts like Dark Star, St. Stephen, Jackstraw, Tennessee Jed. So just an incredible best of. They got a lot of different compilations and best ofs, as you'd imagine, because they have a vast catalog. But for me, again, it took me a good portion of my adult life to figure out why the Dead are who they are and why there is such a culture around them. It's probably a one-of-a-kind band, just like you can say the Beatles are a one-of-a-kind band, changed rock and roll. I don't think there's anyone else that even compares to the Dead. They obviously started a movement where there are other bands who have followed in their footsteps, like a Widespread Panic, or even to some extent a Pearl Jam as far as how they operate their business. But to me, the Dead are one of the absolute essential rock bands that everyone should take a crash course in. There are other artists like that, like a Dylan or a Led Zeppelin, or you could go on and on. But for me, if they are just one of those essential, I would say, maybe the most iconic American rock band ever. Think about it. That's the Dead. This is a great best of. That is a good starting point, I think. If you're not familiar with the Dead, this might be one to check out. This has been reissued a ton. I think this was originally, so this is a 1977, it says here on the back, which is probably about right, but there's a lot of different versions of this one. So if you don't find this one, check out any of the Dead stuff. They got a lot of best stuffs. So that's number two, Best of the Dead. What do we got next, Ben? All right, we're doing iconic albums. I like this. Sticky Fingers. It's hard to say if this is my favorite Stones record, but it's definitely in the top 3 or 4. I would go between Sticky Fingers, Exile on Main Street, Let It Bleed, maybe Beggar's Banquet. They're all so good, but Sticky Fingers, I think to me it's got probably the most swagger, I would say, of any Stones record. I'm flipping it around. You've got Dead Flowers is a great tune, kind of a country tinged tune. It kicks off with Brown Sugar. You've got Wild Horses. Sway is probably one of my favorite underrated Stones tune. This is obviously a vintage, or not obviously, this is a vintage pressing that actually has the working zipper, which is always important. If you're looking for a vintage copy, try and find one that's got the zipper that's actually working. You typically will see it up here, some damage from people kind of whether or not they're using the zipper or not up and down to see how it works, but it's just a kind of a tricky jacket. So it's hard to find a really clean copy of this one. So if you ever find a clean copy of the Stones Sticky Fingers and it's got the zipper working, pick it up. They're not super expensive per se, but to find one in good condition is a little tricky. So that's the Stones. Love Sticky Fingers. Great pick, Ben. That's number 3. What do we got next? All right, The Doors. LA Woman, fantastic album. Let's see, 1971. This is a cool copy. This is one of, I think one of like kind of the original or first pressings that have the kind of lenticular, or I should say the transparent cover here to where you can see it's actually on like a, printed on like a clear film, which is really cool. And then when the jacket goes in is when you get the actual effect of the yellow cover. So later pressings and current day pressings don't have that. So if you find one that have got the that cool cool packaging, I would definitely recommend picking it up. I've got a bunch of different versions of them of this one, but this is definitely one of my favorites because of that. Love Her Madly, LA Woman, of course, Crawling King Snake, Riders on the Storm, just a classic Doors record. I would say this one along with Morrison Hotel are probably my 2 favorites of the Doors. So definitely, you know, if you're not familiar with the Doors, please fix that. LA Woman's a pretty good place to start, all of that early stuff. Of course, the self-titled record's amazing as well. So love the Doors, love that pick, Ben. That's number 4. What else we got? Oh, we're jumping around. All right. Secret Machines, 10 Silver Drops. You may not have heard of this one. I don't know. If you're from the Dallas area like me, you may know this name. Secret Machines come from a number of different Dallas bands prior to when the band moved, I think, to the New York area. This is early 2000s, I believe, to form Secret Machines. So there's a couple bands out of Dallas. One was called UFOFU. One was called Captain Audio. And the members, after those bands kind of split up, they went on to form Secret Machines. They moved to New York, made a name for themselves. They've only had, I think, 3 or 4 records. Unfortunately, Benjamin Curtis, who was their drummer, or I'm sorry, he was the bass player in this band. He was the drummer in Tripping Daisy. Long story. But he unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, and I think they're still putting out music, some that they were working on. They put out an album in recent years. But anyways, this album is great. This is their second record. Their first record, which I believe is Now Here Is Nowhere, is also amazing. The second record was a great follow-up. This is, so if I think about key tracks, Alone, Jealous, and Stone, which is the opening track is amazing. Lightning Blue Eyes, Daddy's in the Doldrums. The whole first side, honestly, is just fantastic. And this has got really nice packaging. This is a pressing by a company called Run Out Groove, I believe. Yeah, Run Out Groove, where if you check out Run Out Groove, they do a really cool thing where they let their customers vote on what they're going to press. And so I was really excited when they popped this one up and it got voted to actually get repressed. They've done a couple of Secret Machines records, which is really cool. So really appreciate this record. Originally came out in 2006. This is a 2019 reissue. I think there's a couple different versions of this on vinyl, but pretty hard to come by. As you imagine, not a super mainstream band, but incredible psychedelic, very Led Zeppelin inspired, rock, which for me is a great thing. So Secret Machines, that's number 5. What else we got? Ah, lovely. Temple of the Dog. I could talk for 30 minutes alone, at least just on this one. This is a reissue of Temple of the Dog's Lone album. You can see it's got like a lenticular, there's the word, lenticular kind of flat on the front, which is really cool. Released in, let's see, 90, 91? Surely I got that right, right? It didn't come out before that. If you don't know the story of this album was a tribute to the late, great Andy Wood from Mother Love Bone. Mother Love Bone was the band that Andrew Wood fronted, and Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament, most notably from Pearl Jam, were in. Andy Wood unfortunately passed away, overdosed in right around 90. Chris Cornell wrote the majority of these songs. He wrote the first 2 tracks, Say Hello to Heaven and Reach Down, specifically in tribute to Andy. And then he asked the guys from Mother Love Bone, which mainly was Stone and Jeff, to come and record those songs. And they decided, you know what, let's just record a whole album. They were just at that point forming Pearl Jam, so Mike McCready was around, so he came in, and they had just met Eddie, and Eddie Vedder came in and sang backup vocals on the single, which the big single was Hunger Strike. Lastly, Matt Cameron on drums, who was in Soundgarden, and then went on to play in Pearl Jam. So very much in the family. This one, along with the Mad Season record above, are probably, in my opinion, the 2 greatest supergroup albums from the 90s. There was quite a few, but this was just amazing, and obviously holds a lot of weight because of the tribute to Andy Wood. So love Temple of the Dog. Another great pick, Ben. Absolute essential record. How are we doing now? All right, Smashing Pumpkins, Gish. Another record from the early 90s. This produced by Butch Vig, I believe, I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure it was. This is the album that preceded, looking for some credits. I don't see them though. This preceded Siamese Dream. And honestly, it preceded a lot of the Seattle era grunge movement. Smashing Pumpkins are from Chicago, so they were doing their own thing in Chicago. This was a groundbreaking record and started to get a lot of attention on MTV, on 120 Minutes and stuff like that. This is pre-Nevermind. That's the key. Everything's kind of pre and post Nevermind in those early 90s. Pre-Nevermind, Smashing Pumpkins were already doing really well and starting to make a name for themselves. Nevermind explodes, of course, and at that time the band was recording Siamese Dream. So by the time Butch Vig went on to produce Nevermind and then got back to the Smashing Pumpkins for Siamese Dream, they exploded, of course, too. But don't discount this first Smashing Pumpkins record. An incredible set of songs. I Am One, I believe, was the first single on this. I don't see the track list on the back, so I don't want to butcher the names, but a lot of incredible tracks. And I think, too, I really appreciate, because you can just hear, what's about to come. You can hear that Siamese Dream is on the cusp of being developed, which, not to discount this record, but it's nowhere near as good as Siamese Dream as far as contextually and production-wise, and just I think the band had kind of come into their own at that point, especially Billy Corgan. But Gish is a great album, one of the just epic debuts from the early 90s scene. So check out Gish by Smashing Pumpkins if you're not familiar. All right, I think we got a couple more, Ben. How is this number? I think this is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you got 3 more after this. Not Lateralis. Fear Inoculum by Tool. Never pressed on vinyl officially. That's a whole different discussion. But this is an unofficial copy because that's all that exists. The band's never pressed it on vinyl, just like they've never pressed their previous album, 10,000 Days, unfortunately. No one knows why that they refuse to press their stuff. My gut says it's probably wrapped up in legalities. This is a really cool version. This was the first, there's been a lot of unofficial pressings of this. This was the first version that came with this kind of unique cover and this unique kind of splatter, I guess it's a little bit of a splatter or smoke, clear translucent gold. It's got the unique cover. Most of the covers are closer to matching the CD cover, which is a darker black and gold. Phenomenal album. I mean, if you don't do anything, just go listen to Pneuma and go listen to Tempest. Those 2 songs alone make this album worth it for me, and that's not to discount the title track or the song Invincible or the songs Descending. Some incredible tracks. I kind of look at this album as like 3 different EPs because most of the songs are so long, we're talking 10, 12-minute range, that it's kind of like 2 or 3 songs in one, for each track. So if you listen to it with that in mind, especially on vinyl on the different sides of the record, I think it's a little more consumable. It's a lot to listen to in one setting, but that's Tool, They're not going to do anything simple. They're not going to cut any corners. It took them years to record this. It's well documented that they could have released it years earlier, and kind of glad they didn't. I love the way it turned out. There's a lot of people who think it didn't kind of deliver after all of the hype. Not me. Fear Inoculum's a great record. Phenomenal band. Incredible live. That's Tool, Fear Inoculum. All right, let's go a completely separate direction. Ryan Adams, Ashes and Fire, one of my favorite records by Ryan Adams, and that's saying something because he's got a vast catalog. This is a record that, first of all, it features Benmont Tench from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It features, I think, Norah Jones as well. It's got a couple other people on there. It's just a really gentle record, almost all acoustic based. And in my opinion, some of his best songs that kind of harken back to the Heartbreaker Gold era of the beginning of his career. He's done a lot of different stuff. Ryan's done just about every genre, from alt country to some punk rock style stuff to garage rock. And then, but I think at his core, him with an acoustic guitar is where it's at. And I think this one really showcases that. The title track is great, Ashes and Fire, Chains of Love, Kindness, Lucky Now. Lucky Now is a phenomenal song. So if you're not familiar with Ryan Adams, or maybe you've heard a little bit, I would highly recommend checking out Ashes and Fire. It's a great record. It's not hard to get. I think you can still pick this up. It's still in print, which is a great thing. So, and I love the artwork on this record. It's just a beautiful album all around. Saw him on this tour. Really, really great artist and a great album. All right, we got two left, Ben. What do we got? Interesting. All right, we're going to go with Axis Bold as Love by Jimi Hendrix. Another classic record, iconic cover. Jimmy's first few records, fold out like that, are just so special. Obviously, so influential from a guitarist standpoint. But the thing that I think that, I don't think Jimmy gets enough credit for is for his songwriting, honestly. You hear so much about his guitar playing and his ability to innovate on the guitar, but you listen to an album like this, Up From the Skies, the opening track, you've got, Bold as Love, probably my favorite Jimmy tracks, which is Castles Made of Sand. That's hard, but man, if I had to pick one, that might be it. And then you've got Little Wing as well. So another classic album. We had, LA Woman in there. We had Sticky Fingers in there. This one's right up with that as well. I think this came out in like 67, if I had to guess. 67. It was a guess, but it was a good guess. This is a reissue, actually. I've got a couple original copies of this, but man, I love the artwork. Simply iconic, no matter which way you hold it. And again, just an essential listen. And I think it's weird to say that Jimi Hendrix would be underrated because he's such an icon, but again, I think from a songwriting standpoint, he still really is. He was he hated his vocals, he hated his voice, but I think there's a charm in it, and I think he was phenomenal. Not only at ripping it on guitar, but from a songwriting standpoint, I think Castles Made of Sand definitely proves that. So, all right, last but not least on this blind vinyl review is.
I have two that I'm choosing between.
Two that you're choosing between. Okay, just pick one. Let's do this. All right, there you go. One of your favorites, Ben. I like it. Creedence, Chronicles, the 20 greatest hits. This is another iconic band, another iconic American band. Green River, Down on the Corner, Fortunate Son, Bad Moon Rising, Problem. It's just, if you're going to talk about a band that's very valid that they should have a greatest hits, certainly Creedence is one. I love their earlier studio records, which the majority of these songs came from. Just a really unique kind of swampy sound. I would put them and, a Skynyrd kind of in the same era, just very dirty Southern rock, down home, no frills, just, guitars, bass, and drums. Love Creedence. Probably a band I don't listen to enough, honestly, but every time I do come across them, I really do enjoy it. There's again, you can't really mistake this as a greatest hits because every single one of them, all the way through, is a hit, and that's Creedence. That's a good pick. This is one of Ben's favorites, so it doesn't surprise me that we ended on that one. So there you go. That's 10 records that I just talked about blindly. Ben, thank you very much for the picks. You did an excellent job. Maybe you'll get a guest starring spot on a future episode. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the people think. So, all right. This has been Talking About Records. G.I. Sanders, Benjamin Sanders from NTX Vinyl. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.